Hey everybody, it's me, Angela Walters. Welcome to this week's live chat. I'm super excited to be here today talking about my favorite thing, quilting, and I've got a lot planned for you all today. First of all, if you notice the Christmassy theme, it's because I'm in the middle of filming some Christmas videos, so I've got some show and tells and some giveaways as well. I wasn't here last week. Sorry about that, everybody. I was on a machine setup, and then I actually won't be here next week either because I'm teaching a long arm boot camp here at our building. So, but I'll be back in 2 weeks. Super excited about it. Anyway, as normal, Jessica's behind the camera, so watching the chat. So if you have any questions you want me to answer during the live chat, be sure to give them to her. And if you want to be entered in the giveaway, which I'm going to show you in a second, go ahead and leave a comment too. So say, what's up? How's it going? Something like that. I love doing giveaways because I know how to make quilters like me. It's with free things, right? No, it's just fun way to, reward some of you for watching and participating with this because I am so tickled that I get to do this for a job. I just can't even believe it. So thank you so much for being here. First off, we have some brand new shirts. This is the one I've been wearing, the teal one, but you also have a lighter kind of blue. It finishes better than perfect t-shirt, and one lucky viewer is going to win a finishes better than perfect shirt. All you have to do is leave the comment, and Jessica will pick it at the end. Another brand new thing we just got in is my new Christmas fabric collection. I'm going to talk more about the season's greetings here in a second, but one lucky viewer is going to win this bad boy. What's so funny is fat quarters look so much better in a bundle. Have you noticed? Like, they just look so happy. They're like the perfect decoration. That and like jelly rolls for sure. Oh gosh, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so we've been kind of talking, I think 2 weeks ago I announced a new video series that was coming up in November, Season's Greetings, where we're gonna be doing some quilting and some creating. And I have been filming those videos, kind of working through that. And I have said the word ho more times in the last couple days than I have my whole life. You know, as in ho, 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 of course. But I have been singing Christmas carols and had Christmas on the mind, I'm sure, driving everybody around me crazy. But if you didn't catch that live chat, be sure to check it out. I think it's going to be so much fun. So we just got the panels in. We'll start filling in those orders for people that ordered. But then I got to start making all the samples. So I just couldn't wait. I had to show you here in a second. I'm going to show you here in a second. But first of all, if you missed that live chat, you can go back and watch it, but I'm going to be quilting on these Christmas panels that I designed for the video series, a bigger one and a smaller one. The bigger one's only 36 by 42, not too big, lots of fun to quilt. And then you can see here them actually quilted. Like I said, I've been having so much fun. I've probably quilted 5 or 6 of the pillow panels for different samples and the larger one as well. So we do have those available. So if you want to get them so you can quilt along with me when the time is right in November, you can definitely do that. And we have the cutest little custom pins that go with it. So through my video series, usually I have like a pin that goes with it, and this one's a little smaller because it's like a mini challenge. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can click the link in the description box below of the live chat. Even if you want to get some of the shirts, I have the link in there as well. But like I said, I want to do a little show and tell. So here's the pillow panel that I quilted for filming. Isn't it adorable? I had fun like using different thread colors and throwing in some different motifs. But I have some easier options as well, because you guys know I like to quilt things to death, so don't feel like, oh, I don't want to quilt it like that. Then we're going to take those panels and cut them up, which is kind of crazy. Of course, you can leave them whole as wall hangings, or you could make a stocking or 2. Guys, this is the first time I've ever made a stocking. I'll say that in the video when you see it in November, but like how adorable is that? So cute. Also, you can make some placemats. Now, don't be impressed with my binding skills because Joni bound them for me. But like, I love the random like cutout. Sorry, I'm just too excited about this right now, obviously. You can see the cuteness there. Or you can make pillows. Take that pillow panel and cut it into some smaller ones. And see, we're gonna learn how to do some festive holiday decorations like holly and little starbursts. Oh my gosh, too cute. And then I just filmed this today. Look at that. It's a zipper pouch. Isn't that adorable? None of these projects are anything that's difficult or anything that's like groundbreaking, but it's just fun to take those bigger panels and turn them into stuff, especially if you have quilting samples laying around that you don't want to finish. But my favorite point is, let's say you quilt a big whole panel and you only love part of it, then cut out the part you like, turn it into something cool and put the rest in a doggy bed, in the trash, wherever you want to put it. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be 4 videos starting in November, kind of like a little mini video series. But I will be announcing a new Free Motion Challenge quilting along, which is all about machine quilting, in for January. I'll be announcing that within the next couple months. So a lot going on up here, but I've just been hiding in my filming room humming Christmas tunes. It's just been too much fun. So anyway, I just had to show that because, you know, I know you guys like to see my stuff. All right, but what I'm actually talking about today, the teachable moment, is the quilt that I finished up for Tula Pink. So if any of you have watched Tula's Tuesday video, you probably noticed I was on there. I went to her new studio. I don't want to brag. I got to see it. So cool. So if you haven't saw that, go check it out because it's pretty fun. I texted her later on that night. I said, I just watched the video and we're so funny. Like it's because sometimes I forget what we talk about in the moment. And it was pretty fun just to kind of reminisce about it. But this is a quilt I dropped off for her. It's the Grayworks fabric collection, one of the quilts from that, which we're actually getting that in the store. We'll have the whole collection in our quilt shop, so excited about that. But it was kind of cool just to kind of talk a little bit about our process. And I know if you watch that video that we did together, most of what I'm going to say is going to be kind of repeat, but it's kind of neat to see like how you can work with somebody for so long and then kind of create this kind of thing. So we've been quilting together for 16 years. We kind of told this story on her video that I was heavily pregnant with my youngest daughter when I quilted the first quilt for her. And I was really, really scared I was going to go into labor because it was a market quilt. Haley was born May 9th, so that shows you how close we were. May 4th, don't tell her I just gave the wrong day. That's my mom's birthday. Anyway, I'm fine. Haley doesn't watch this anyway, so it's all right. Anyway, so working with her, we have done at least 10 quilts together. No, I'm just kidding. I would say it's probably in the hundreds for the market quilts and other quilts that she does. So this one, I wanted to go see her studio and drop it off, and so it was kind of fun just to see that. And here's just some pictures that her friend Jessie took during it. So we're kind of looking at it. And it's funny because you would think that I like meet with her every time we have this 2-hour conversation about how I'm going to quilt it, but that's really not how it goes. The quilt shows up at my house, I quilt it, and then the quilt leaves my house. And so there really isn't a whole lot of conversation at this point. We've worked together so long. I know what she likes. If there's something that she wants me to show off, she'll point it out. So for this particular quilt, she said, I want the quilting to kind of have a transition from like whatever, just like kind of moves. And she didn't want it necessarily to blend. I said, do you want each row separate? Yeah, kind of. And so that was about, you know, the amount of direction that she gave, which is perfect. Just point me the direction. What do you want to show off? What do you want to get out of the quilting? And then let me come up with the idea for it. So when I was going through the pictures, this photo came up and I'm like, ooh, this should be a meme, right? Like caption this, right? When your friend steals your fabric or something fun. So I don't know if she's going to kill me for putting this on there, but you know, when you're doing videos and you do get like photos of it, you get some really funny faces. Kind of funny. All right, so here's the quilt. She actually came and dropped it off with me, and I did a little video, but I haven't done anything with it yet. But I did get kind of an overhead shot of the quilt before it was quilted. This is about as much as you're going to get there. Whenever possible, I do like to show the quilts when it's just the quilt top, because it's hard to look at it and imagine it quilted in any other way, right? So here you can kind of see what I was working with. Each block had the focal square in the center and then a checkerboard around the outside showing off obviously the prints in her Grayworks that go from dark to medium to light to lightest. And so those were the blocks that she kind of wanted to ombre out. And from the time that she gave this to me, the time I quilted it was several months, and I was like, what am I going to do? Right? What am I going to do? I couldn't think of anything. And so when I loaded the quilt, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I loaded it with the dark at the top. I skipped the dark part first because I couldn't decide what to do and moved on to the second one. So eventually I came up with an idea, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. But just know that I've been quilting a long time and I still get stumped with how to quilt a quilt top. So it's nothing I think that you necessarily grow past. You just learn like, okay, I got to load this thing and get started. So let's start echoing. That's usually my default, echo or swirls until some ideas come. So here's a quilt top. And then I got a few pictures when I was finished, but I got mostly kind of some video. So I'm going to play some video and then voice over it for you. So we'll see how that goes. But here you can see kind of the quilting, have it hung up, you can kind of see. So the top has the most geometric, top row, and then the next row has echoing with a little bit of curve. And then the next one has less echoing with some swirls. And then in the center, I quilted a big, beautiful feather on both sides that kind of disregard all of the rest. So that was kind of my idea with ombre, right? Going from really geometric to a little bit less and a little bit less. It took me forever to figure out how to quilt those blocks because, like with the individual squares, I wasn't sure, do I highlight the individual squares or the whole overall block? And ultimately, I went with the whole overall block. So instead of quilting each little one separately. We know, if you've listened to any of my live chats, I love to echo. So echoing is just the way to highlight it. So you can even see around some of those focal prints, adding those echo lines, echoing around some of the other lines in that block, and then just filling in the space between with some ribbon candy and some different designs. It was really funny. When I showed her the quilt, she noticed right away, like, oh, you put a little something special in the corner here. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, that's because I can't turn the corner with the ribbon candy. So unknowns to her, she kind of pointed out the one thing. I'm like, well, that's the one thing I can't do. So it's just kind of funny to see. I told her, usually if you look at something I've done, no, I've done it that way because it was easier, an easier option. So it was kind of difficult to get a picture of the quilting just because have these beautiful prints and they're a little bit darker, but you can kind of get an idea of the texture here. So multiple echo lines, lots of swirls, and of course that feather right in the center. I was a little nervous about the feather because it does cross over the lines of the block. So I kind of joke, it's like the make a rule and then you break a rule. So I had this rule, but I'm like, let's do some feathers. Let's do this big, beautiful kind of shape in the center. The reason I love that is it still does frame the blocks. It adds that curvy bit and just kind of draws your eye to the center of the quilt. If I'm looking at a quilt top and I'm never quite sure where I want to draw attention to, I usually kind of aim towards the center. I don't know why, that's just what I do. And I loved how it turned out. And in the echoing around the blocks that were around that center, I quilted those echo lines so they looked like they ran right into the feather. So I wanted that feather to look like it was plopped down on top of all the other quilting. That meant I had to do some starts and stops in some different areas, and you can't, even if you saw it, you wouldn't really be able to tell that, but not everybody has to get your joke, right? You can do it knowing that you know where it's at. So here we can see me pointing out some little details, getting some B-roll, but there's that echoing that runs into the feather, and then having those swirls on the inside. Then in between the feathers, I quilted the heck out of it, nice and dense to really make the fabric pop out. So moving on, we can see here kind of in that kind of feather, that detail in the center. So I'm just kind of pointing it out for you. Look at that. Super fun. And I didn't measure, or I didn't mark out those feathers. I just kind of eyeballed them, but I could use the blocks as a guide, right? I had the center of those lightest blocks and I knew I wanted to kind of come under and around it. So I just kind of used that as a guide for it, especially since marking them out takes a little bit of time and I wanted to make it a little bit quicker. So now in the prints, I don't know if I played this one yet. Oh, here I think I'm showing the backing. Yes, you can see the backing there. You really can't see the quilting on the backing, but I just want to show you how gorgeous that fabric is. Just stunning. I love it. So much fun. All right, so here's some close-up pictures of the blocks as I worked my way down. This one was my absolute favorite block, and it was the last section that I did. So when I started, I kind of skipped over that because I'm like, I don't know. I knew that needed to be the most geometric, and I couldn't think of what to do, so I skipped to the next row. And so I did the whole quilt, came to the bottom, did that darkest kind of area, and then went back up to the top. And I love how it turned out. And in our video, she kind of points it out, but I'm still echoing. I'm just using the echo lines to create a secondary pattern that frames that center fabric. When I'm quilting any quilt, it doesn't matter what it's for, I need to know like the most important thing so I can make the quilting highlight that. If it is for a video series, the Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along, I know the quilting needs to be teachable. If it's for Tula, I know the quilting needs to sell her fabric, or at least not overwhelm her fabric. So within those busy prints, I just do a little bit of detail quilting just to kind of help hold it down. I wish I didn't have to do anything in there, but sometimes leaving it unquilted can be as distracting as quilting too much. So I get in there, add a little bit of detail. You can see in that wolf in the center, just whatever, as least I can get away with, and then leave that alone, and then do all the extra over the top quilting around the outside of it to help draw attention. So you can see some echo lines and then that little half feather that filled it in. I could have done ribbon candy in that point, but I do like repetition in quilting. Now, I think it makes me sound artsy. Don't be fooled. I'm not like artistic. I just know what I like. And I like when you have the same design in a couple different ways on the quilt. So I knew at that point, I already had that big, beautiful feather in the center. This is just kind of taking that and reusing it in a different area. And then that dot-to-dot quilting in the corners that really kind of draw your eye to that area. Loved how it turned out. Sometimes you quilt something and I'm like, okay, that looks fine. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that was really cool. So I was very, very happy with how that turned out. I think it looks pretty neat, especially since we have so many different prints in here that, you know, she's kind of alternating, making that checkerboard look, but they're very similar in value. So I knew that the quilting wouldn't get lost in some. If this was pieced with like a black print and a white print, I might not do it like this because the thread would cross over and detract from that. But since they were very similar, I knew that I could treat them all as the same print. And sometimes I say stuff out loud and I'm like, wow, I really overthink this a lot. So if it seems a little neurotic, just ignore it for a little bit. It's totally fine. And another side photo of that. So working my way down those blocks. So then we get to the next color and I'm like, okay, a little bit less geometric, but I have like, 3 steps of this. So I started echoing the actual rows of that block. So looking at that checkerboard, instead of treating it as all one piece, I kind of treated it as 2 separate borders. And I know, I overthink stuff, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't go into all that detail. But echoing, just to help highlight the sides of the block, putting in those ribbon candy, because I like quilting them, but there's also some wishbones in there, and then working my way around that way. One of the questions that was asked in the type chat before I started was this was from Judy, how do I echo around a block that doesn't fit my long arm space? Now this block did actually fit my long arm space, but usually when you have blocks on point, they get too long for the echoing. So what I like to do is I will echo part of the block, quilt a line right on over to the next echo, and then go into it. So I'm quilting partial echoes and then connecting them on the other side. That means if you were to look close, you would see spots where there's like a line that connects, right? The 2 lines. I try to hide that in a seam. Sometimes I can't, and I just say, I don't care. It's going to just sit there. But they're actually quilted in sections, but they look continuous. And this quilt is an example of it. Unfortunately, I don't have any video of it, but what I did is I started by quilting the center block. Then I traveled out along one of those little seams, did my echo, traveled along the seam to the next one, did my echo, and then use the quilting to get to the other side. I'm just saying I'm quilting it in sections. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds and confuse everybody. But I was able to quilt it from the center out without stopping and breaking thread. So that's kind of how I handle it. And Judy didn't know exactly what I was going to show today, but that was a perfect question to go with the chat. Of course, you could use any filler in between those echo lines. The reason I did curvy lines is I like a little bit of contrast. That's going to help those echo lines kind of stand out a little bit and kind of give me a little bit of flatter area with the unquilted area showing up a little bit. So anything would have been fine in there. Oh, sorry, I had more pictures, but I guess I did not get them in there. Anyway, and then the next one just had echo lines and then swirls in them. So I just did some like elongated swirls. So fewer lines and more swirls on the inside. Now, this quilt, even though it was a lot of different shades of gray, it did require some thread changes. She had the really darker and the lighter, so I had to use 3 or 4 shades of gray. And let me tell you, it is a weird experience using that much gray on a Tula Pink quilt. So this is a little bit of a departure from her. Normally her quilts are, this is vibrant and beautiful, and this one is vibrant and beautiful. Normally I'm switching between like 18 different colors, and so it was kind of nice to rein it in a little bit. Again, when I'm showing quilts, I never want it to be about how great I think my quilting is. I'm just trying to show you kind of what I'm thinking of, what I'm going through it, and how great you can be with it. When you look at the finished quilt and you see all that quilting, you're not going to see the individual parts. You just kind of see the overall thing. And a lot of the times, I think we forget that if we don't know where to look, we just see all of it. So don't worry about your mistakes showing up. Anyway, so that was a lot of fun. I have another quilt that I did for her that I'll probably turn into a little video at some point. But it's usually how I approach the quilts, whether, like I said, it's for Tula or anything else. It's how can I use the quilting to kind of highlight that most important thing. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. I did have a couple questions, or another question to answer, and then I'll see what Jessica has for me over there. So again, just a reminder, no live chat next week. so I won't be here. And then BJ asked, how many quilts did I do before I thought they were okay? And that is probably one of the harder questions to answer, because once you learn something, it's the curse of knowledge. It's so hard to remember what it was like not knowing it, right? And so if I were to look back at that, at past Angela, I would say it was like 6 to 9 months before I was like, okay, I feel like I'm not freaking out as much as I was before. But I'm not a perfectionist. I usually can see like the best in everything. So I'm like, oh, this quilt doesn't look as crappy as the last one, right? So I might have thought I was doing great 3 quilts in, but that was because I didn't have anybody to compare myself to, right? I was the only quilter I knew. Grandpa told me I was great, so I just kind of went with it. So I think it's different for everybody. How much quilting you do obviously will determine it. How your personality already kind of is. You know, are you a perfectionist? Are you hard on yourself? But just know, like, it doesn't take as long as you might think, right? Just have fun and go for it. And in fact, in the season's greetings videos, I kind of say that a lot. Like, you know, we're just having fun here, so it's a good time. So hopefully, I know that was like a non-answer, but that's about as good as I got. A lot of questions over there. I love it. All right. How much is the fussy cut centers quilted in the Tula quilt? So those fabrics are not quilted very heavily. The animals are outlined with a little bit of detail in it, and then whatever's around the animal is a little bit more dense, just to help it pop out a little bit, but not near as dense as the background quilting. In my mind, that makes that fabric kind of come up to the front, kind of pop up just a bit, not in a distracting kind of way, and then lets the rest of the area just kind of support that. So hopefully that helps. What color thread did I use? I kind of said I already used some grays. One thing that is not noticeable, and I don't have any pictures of it, in that darker gray, I actually used a dark navy blue. So I know I said I used grays, but there was a dark navy blue in there, just because it was like just a little hint of like just a little bit of blue, and I just loved how it looked. So you couldn't tell even if you looked at it in person, but I kind of loved how that looked. How would I quilt a sampler quilt? All over design or something for each block separately? Now, usually when somebody asks me how I would quilt something, I give the same answer. It depends. I'm sure you're rolling your eyes right now. It's okay. It depends on, do I want to show off each block? Did I do a great job piecing it? Did I piece one block really well? So usually I would highlight all the blocks. I'd pick a design that is versatile and can be used in a lot of different shapes. So continuous curve, geometric lines, echo lines, and just use them, let the block kind of dictate how that goes. Sampler quilts are tricky though, because like decision fatigue will set in. So one thing that helps with that is to look at your quilt and determine what is going to be the background and pick a easy for you design to quilt in the background. So I'm going to determine that all of these prints are the background, and I'm going to quilt a swirl in them. So it kind of takes some of the decision making away. So again, it just kind of depends. Did I quilt the entire line of feathers from one side to the other and then go back to the other side? I did. So when I loaded the quilt, I worked from top down. You can tell how it was loaded from how the feather is. It's really easy to quilt horizontal designs on a long arm, vertical, not so much. So that's why it was horizontal. And so I quilted my spine, feathered my way back over here, echoed, and then feathered. So that's kind of how I did that. How large are the center blocks? Yay big. No, probably 6 inches or so, if I had to guess. And then there was 2, so probably the finished block might have been 12 to 14 inches. I don't know. That's just kind of how I'm thinking. Did I outline the animals' faces? Great question. I am so scared of quilting faces. They're so easy to mess up because we know what a human face is supposed to look like. We know what a bear is supposed to look like. So if I do quilt in the faces, it's along a line that she's already put for the eye, or it's along the nose. It's along something, and I'm just very, very minimal. So not a whole lot. I think it's just because I'm scared, mostly. When doing a Tula quilt with multiple thread colors, do I finish one color at a time, moving the quilt around, and then come back, or do I change colors as I advance? That also depends. It depends on the amount of thread changes. If I'm working within an area, and let's say this particular area needs half of it one color and half of another color, it's pretty equal, I go ahead and change threads while I'm there, because I don't want to leave big sections like that unquilted to come back. But let's say it's the center of a block and it's white and the rest is black, and I know I need to change for those blocks. Since it's such a little part of it, I'll just come back and do that at the end. So I'll get done. In general though, I'm going to say, again, I'm going to talk out loud. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't maybe say that. But when I get to the end of the quilt, I do not like going back up to the top. I mean, I will, and I especially will do that for Tula. But for me, mentally, when I get to the end of the quilt, I kind of want to be done with it. I'm kind of already thinking about how I'm moving on. And so usually I don't want to get to the end of the quilt, but still have a bunch left to come back to. So that's kind of how I like to break it up. Again, everybody is different. So you take that for what it is, and the more you try something, the more you're going to find what works out for you. I always joke, when you have two options, try them both, and whichever one makes you feel less like throwing up is the one to go with. Just joking, of course. All right, great questions. If you have any more or you didn't watch this live, be sure to leave them in the comment section, because I get on there from time to answer them. And like I said, I won't be back next week, but in 2 weeks, I'll be back with tips for quilting sampler quilts. So I just put together the quilting diagrams for our block of the month, so I'm going to show you all some ideas for quilting those. But before I leave, we have 2 lucky winners. So for the Fat Quarter Bundle, Barbara Patton is our lucky winner. So Barbara, email us at customerservice@quiltingismytherapy.com and we'll get that sent to you. And Holly Young is the winner of the shirt. So do the same, Holly. So thank you so much. Again, if you want to learn more about the shirts or the products, just click the link in the description box below and it will take you there. So I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you in just a couple weeks. Until then, happy quilting.